Well, good morning, everybody. Turn down the music a little bit, and welcome to the show. We've had a couple of technical difficulties. As you can see, multiple faces of me in the background there. But we're starting today. 360 Performance coming at you at KUHS Denver on a Friday. A little past 11. Usually it's 11 a.m. But we had some issues with Facebook. Well, sorry, not Facebook. Sorry. Take that back. Time out, not Facebook. With Zoom, they did an update, and that changed a few things. So we're going to be talking to Justin Franston this morning about an issue that, I knew about it, but I didn't realize that it was still kind of out in the environment, literally and figuratively, and that it represented a challenge for people. It is quite the EMF is what it is, electric-magnetic fields, or electromagnetic fields. But I want to make the distinction today with Justin in talking to him, because he looks at EMF as an influence on athleticism and wants to help diminish or abate that influence, because there could be some health risks associated with that. As some have kind of tongue-in-cheek it a little bit. Your cell phone has electric, magnetic, or electromagnetic field to it. So we want to make sure that we get that squared away a little bit, understanding a little bit. The World Health Organization has some thoughts on it, because as the world has grown and developed technologically, apparently it's gotten worse. And it's such a subtle development in our worlds that we don't really feel it. So I'm going to ask Justin about how to measure it, how to know what the impact is, because cancer has been connected to this. Various forms of cancer have been connected to this. So it's not like you kind of feel it growing and changing until it's almost too late. But I'm just very curious, because we're about performance here at 360 Performance every Friday at 11 a.m. here on KUHS radio and television. We're going to be Justin is texting me as we talk about getting him on board with us today, and talking more about the EMF. But let me give you some introductions to that as relates to the World Health Organization and what they have to say about the electromagnetic fields, their frequencies. Many times you may have heard stories, in addition to the cell phones, you may have heard stories about power lines, massive power lines that are overhead in certain neighborhoods. I know that with colleagues of mine, I've spent a good amount of time talking to friends and colleagues about the influence of these massive power lines that are above neighborhoods. That you don't go buy a new house in those areas, because you can hear the hum. And in fact, on the occasions that as a young man, I've taken shortcuts, because they make a pretty big swath where they put in those big power lines, those huge towers with the massive cables on them. And I've walked in those easements where those power lines are, and you can feel the magnetic waves that are created through that. Now, the more common areas of EMF influences are the magnetic fields that are created during MRI, a CT scan, an X-ray. I have doctor colleagues of mine that tell me about the frequency with which you should be getting X-rays. So just because a doctor recommends you go get an X-ray doesn't mean it would be a good thing for you to do if you've had a series of MRIs, CTs, and X-rays. Now, if that happens, usually the health condition you're in is a bit dire, that they're recommending you do all those imagery type of things. So I guess the influence of EMF may not be as detrimental as what you're actually going through that requires you to get a CT scan or an MRI or an X-ray. there's just a lot of different forms of radiation and electromagnetic fields that that are in our world. They're all around us. There are times we're getting Justin's coming in with us. So as Justin comes in, hey Justin, how are you, bud? I'm going to finish up my remarks, and then I'll formally introduce you to Justin Franson. But we were talking about the background of EMF and how it's all around us in the medical community. So, Justin, good morning. Unmic yourself so that you can say good morning to our viewers here in good old Colorado. We're looking at Justin down in Southern California, right, Justin?
Yes, Lou. Well,
good morning to you.
Good morning.
And I'm glad that the technology has now abated itself and is now our friend again. So Justin, you call yourself an athleticism performance coach, advisor. Give me the full title that you go by.
Yeah, I'm an athleticism performance coach. Started athleticism.com about 25 years ago, working with amateur and professional athletes on coordination and nerve work for sports performance.
Is that pre-post injury or not at all injury related?
No, it started as high level performance and it's transitioned into post PT bridge training, all the way through to high level performance.
And did you get involved in this particular area of athletic performance because you were an athlete yourself, or a combination of that plus the studying you did as an undergrad and graduate?
Yeah, both. I was an athlete. I grew up, I was a two-sport player in high school with soccer and tennis, varsity letters in both of them for all years, and wanted to play tennis at SC. Went to University of Southern California, and I actually ended up getting hurt before I got there, and just wasn't even able to give it a go. So I had a burning desire to help people not go through that same situation.
Yeah, you and I have a similar foundation in that regard. I was an athlete in high school and college, played two sports, baseball and basketball at college at the University of Iowa, and then got an injury my sophomore year. So I've been always motivated and empathetic towards athletes that are emotionally trying to deal with that recovery process, as well as, where's this coming from? I think I'm okay, but I'm just not getting everything out of me that I need to. Like you said, with SC, that's a competitive tennis squad there. I've had the fortune to be able to work with them in the past, with my colleagues at IMG down in Florida. So I know what you mean by that competitive fervor that is driving you to compete, and yet if you don't have it, it's next man up or next person up to get that going. So talk to me then about where did the EMF, the mindfulness about that come into play for you?
Yeah, so working with these guys, I saw them starting to bring in a lot more radiation into their world than they have ever had and that I ever had growing up. And so I knew it was an invisible stressor, and one of them in particular was like the aha moment for me when one of the strongest, fittest athletes, an endurance athlete, came in with a smartwatch and his whole arm went weak. And so I'm like, get that radiation off your wrist, and he got better without me really doing much to him. So I saw it profoundly in the clinical setting where guys were getting their life force chipped away at them from this non-native EMFs.
So when we use the term EMF, I've heard it referenced as electric magnetic fields, and then the other one is electromagnetic fields. That's synonymous, correct?
Correct.
All right, so if we shorten it down for the brevity of our show, EMF and the influences of EMF, where do they come from traditionally that most people can relate to? Where are that EMF influence coming from?
Well, there's two different sources now. And before 1889, when we introduced electricity into our homes, it was just cosmic shifts. So from solar flares. So, everything has a resonance. our universe is built on waveforms and resonances, and so are we. And we're one with the universe. We're built on scalar waves. And scalar waves are waveforms that distribute equally in every direction. So this man-made EMFs are one-directional waveforms. They're non-native. They're not natural waveforms that we would see in nature or that our bodies would produce or rev off of. So when we introduce electricity or dirty electricity or wireless signals, they're all one-directional waveforms or they don't work. So that's so different than how we're designed.
It's interesting that the perspective you're bringing to bear here is it almost sounds diagnostic, you know, because there's math and science around electric and magnetic forces. So for me, when you talk about it, I think about, because recently I've had more than my fair share of MRIs due to a knee injury, so and X-rays. So those are two sources right there that
Right.
They're non-natural.
Definitely, the MRIs with magnetic resonance would not be as bad for your health as an X-ray or a CT scan. That would be more the ionized radiation. That's on the spectrum that you want to avoid at all costs, especially like those scanner machines where you go through at airports,
Yep.
things like that. So I talk a lot about athletes opting out because if they're traveling 25 times a year competing, double that for both directions, that's 50 more full body x-rays than they ever want on them. But the magnetic resonance, most of the NFL guys, they'll have an MRI done after every game.
Yeah, I relate to that very quickly, and now you're making me think about some of the questions I need to be asking of the franchise leadership or the college administrators about their processing travel. Many times the Division II schools, less than the Division I, they're not going commercial. They're going charter. So they don't have the scanners when they do that. The same thing is with the pros. Not every pro team has every athlete on the chartered flight because they're doing something else, so they'll have to use commercial flights to catch up with the team and what have you. But exposure is what you're talking about. Exposure to those electromagnetic fields and being conscientious and mindful of where and when am I exposed. So for me, it gives me this question for you. Can I stay away from it and recover? So if I'm exposed to it a lot, can I get away from it, like go into nature and just kind of hang out and kind of filter my body will filter it out, the impacts? What can I do?
Yeah, definitely. Well, you gotta realize our body acts like a body battery. So we get a negative ionic charge from the earth and we pull those electrons in it to help recharge us. So getting out into nature is great. We get a positive, unpolarized balance from the sun with their unpolarized waveforms. So our body's like a body battery. We get the negative from below, we get the positive from above, we breathe in the minerals, and hopefully we get it from some food, and that's how our body battery works. So yes, if you're inundated with EMF, a non-native radiation, your eyes, your teeth, your thymus, and your large intestine are 4 areas that could get decharged. And then you have some fatigue. You can not wake up right on your energy in the mornings. We don't know when that light switch goes off, but guaranteed there's at some point there's going to be a threshold where, yeah, you're going to need to get out into nature again and to recharge your body battery. And we use our grounding bags to do it when you're in your home. So you go outside, go barefoot, touch a tree, get into a body water, do that cold water therapy naturally outside, and then get in the sunlight, and then also, at home, use the grounding bags, and you could tap on them to recharge you, just have those close to you, and that'll create a resonance that's from the Schumann resonance of the earth that creates coherence between us and non-native, and it will help recharge you as well. So
I'm gonna come back to the grounding bags in a minute as ways and methods to take charge of it, so to speak. A little pun there. but give control back to the athlete, give control back to the individual. But I did some research in the regards to Native Americans, because I'm a steam lodge kind of person. I love to, have the rocks and the heat in there and the water and stuff. And I did some research that our Native Americans all over the world, or natives all over the globe, but our Native Americans had the sweat lodges, and they would bring in rocks and stuff from wherever they were at. What they didn't know was that many times those rocks had components in them that helped to diminish the impact of, back in those days, solar flares, because they didn't have the wires above them, all that kind of stuff. But there was that therapeutic benefit that they received from the rocks being steamed in the lodge, and then having the human component in there. And it's tantamount to the Norwegians and Swedes doing their sweat lodges, and they going out and falling into the snow. And I'm not so much into the beating myself with the branches, but I'll give that to other people. But my point is that we've been doing the therapeutic things to counteract those charges you talk about, and now we move forward from there to the more realistic ways of measuring EMF impacts. What is it that can we measure the EMF impact? And how do we do
definitely.
that? How do we do that?
You measure the speed of the wavelength.
Okay.
It's really simple. So there's meters out there that are made to measure milligauss. A milligauss meter measures a 50 to 60 hertz or waves per second, speed of a wavelength. You have your sleep tracking devices that measure when you're in a theta or a delta brainwave state. That's 1 or below 1 to 8 hertz or waves per second.
Yep.
That's when our bodies are naturally in a low and slow brainwave state when we're replenishing. Our athletes are 8 to 12 hertz or waves per second in an alpha brainwave state when they're what everyone calls in the zone. Now, go back to the electricity, the non-native. So we have milligauss at 50 to 60 waves per second. We have dirty electricity in up into 4,000 to 100,000 waves per second. And then we have the 5G into 60 to 90 gigahertz, they call it. Well, let's convert it so everyone understands what a gigahertz is. That's 10 zeros faster. So that's 60 to 90 billion waves per second. So when we're revving and optimizing, oh wait, let me add this in. The Schumann resonance of the Earth, 7.83 hertz or waves per second. So again, we're rev really low and slow with the Earth and perform at that level. But this 5G stuff is 10 zeros faster of a polarized one-directional charge.
So you're telling me
that's how you measure it.
You're telling me I should put my phone down.
Yeah, you can throw it away probably. Definitely all the smartwatches and the earbuds, and there are proximity protocols you can employ with the phones, because we got to use them most of the time to kind of be part of our society.
Yeah, I haven't had a landline in a house for probably 10 years or more. So
yeah, and the challenge is fiber optic hardwiring, Ethernet cables. It's faster than 5G, safer security-wise, more reliable, because it's not going to go in and out during storms, and then there's minimal health challenges. So we're going the wrong way in a lot of different ways with this stuff.
So with that being said, I have my pieces, just like you've had yours, or you had them and then put them away. The earbuds, the phones, the fiber optics in the house, the faster modem for my Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, all the stuff surrounding me, right? So are the Fitbit manufacturers of the world, are they enlightened by this and adding those components to measure the hertz levels so I know if I'm in or out of my zone?
No one cares about your health. So let's just break it down. Fitbit had huge recalls. Remember those early ones?
Yeah.
They had recalls on them. They're too strong. Same with smart meters. That was a huge. Josh Del Sol did a documentary movie called Take Back Your Power. Highly recommend everyone watch it. They had a whole revamp of the bandwidth, the strength of the waveforms that they were releasing, and had to lower it substantially. And yeah, the FCC came up with procedural levels in 1996. If something's ionizing, it creates a thermal effect, then that's not good for you. But if it's non-ionizing and doesn't create thermal effect, it's okay for you. But Washington State professor Dr. Martin Paul discovered that the voltage-gated calcium channels open up and let positive calcium into a negative cell, in turn cause tremendous cell and DNA damage with low-level EMF. So we know that that's all a lie. And that's your voltage-gated. That's your voltage in your system. That's your metabolism, essentially. That's your energy for your cells get disrupted. And we also know that 2.45 waves per second, which is what these cell phones ping at, 2.45 billion waves per second, that destructures water. So they know this stuff, but yet they roll it out at these specific levels that destructure water. 60 gigahertz takes oxygen out of your system. So if you're destructuring water, it's H2O, it's not H1O. You can't do that. You guys, we gotta understand the science and the physics behind this stuff.
So the science and the physics is there. It's transparent if you want to look at it. If you want to go find it out, it's there. It's not a secret. It's not, I'm trying to debunk the black magic voodoo kind of thought process related to this, because it's been around for a long, long time, but regretfully, it's not as strongly visible as the Rockies are. I mean, if I look west, I know those are mountains. They're very, very real. But when I ask you about measuring EMF, what, for the person, just the general person who's health conscious, what do you recommend for them to have around them so that they know when they're getting close to being in a bad place as it relates to EMF? Is there a little barometer that I can use to kind of clue me in? Is there something that I can have on the wall of my home or my car that's going to let me know?
Yeah, so I have two answers to that. Yes, there are meters to meter each of those waveforms. You can buy a milligauss meter.
Yep.
For electricity and magnetic resonance. You can buy a Stetzer electric meter at STETZER electric.com. You plug it in the wall, it's $140 or so, and that'll measure the amps to volts, any static electricity, which is dirty electricity in your home. Or you can buy a acoustimeter, a wireless meter for the wireless millimeter waves, and that's a little more expensive, but you can get those 3 meters. Once you have those, then you can start to identify things. I mean, even before that, you can say, hey, there's an outlet right there, that means there's electricity on this wall, that's electricity. Hey, I have a microwave, that's millimeter waves, that's the millimeter waves. Well, hey, there's an Alexa over there, that's a wireless. Oh, my computer is wireless, my cell phone's wireless, my smart meter is wireless. All these different devices kick off resonances, but you just know what they are because they're wireless or they're wired. So you know there's electricity to it. Yeah. So yes, you can get meters, but intuitively, I want people to start to recognize what we've done since 1989 when we put electricity into our homes. Like, that's the first thing that started all the flu being not flying in one year and then flying out another with solar flares. It was here to stay when we put electricity in our homes. And in 1918, the Spanish flu, we introduced radio waves on a broad spectrum. That spiked the flu. And then World War II, radar, and Hong Kong flu, satellites, and 5G the last 2 years. It's all documented in this incredible book called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. It categorizes the history of electricity in life.
Yep.
You guys all should check that out. But simple stuff, we just have to have that awareness of what's around us and develop proximity protocols to it. And then when you're inundated with it, make sure you're recharging your body battery and getting grounded by nature.
So you're now causing me to think about my home. So as you were talking, I'm thinking about the layout of my house. And now as a result of that thought process, I should now live in the backyard.
Get a tent. It will be so happy. Your wife will kind of wonder what's going on, but you know, you'll sleep really well.
In a more practical sense, though, Justin, what you are telling me is I should look at the layout of my home and make sure that I either displace or change the positioning of certain things so that I have a better distribution of the concentrations of electric and magnetic wave formations. But being conscientious is the first thing, knowing that it's there and recognizing it.
And yeah, the layout's important with proximity to, I don't want my head on the other side of a refrigerator. I don't want my head on my bed on the other side of a smart meter. Yep. Other than that, I think the big things inside the home you should do is to turn your electricity off at night. Have switches from the electrical panel, you know, inside your house that you can say all the electricity in the bedrooms are shut off at night. Have timer outlets, $9 outlets that you plug in to the wall that are timered, that you plug your wireless devices in. And so at night, your Wi-Fi router turns off when you're sleeping. So or you can have it on a timer where you can have it, you know, like a Christmas tree, you turn it on and off whenever you want it. So you can do that as well. Or hardwire your stuff. But definitely get through these protocols of understanding you want your home to be a sanctuary with less resonance, not wired with all this wireless stuff. Because we definitely can't live in a tent, you know, our whole life. We can't live in a Faraday cage. That's not realistic. Our method and how nature provided it for us is to convert these waveforms through getting grounded by nature and create a coherence with this stuff. And that's the message, is develop proximity protocols, understand the stuff, and create a coherence. Get grounded by nature with the grounding bags. That's inside the home.
So that's great segue, because now it's the practical side of how do I maintain or enhance my performance capabilities. Diminishing or reducing completely impacts of EMF are going to help me to be prepared to perform at my highest level. So the grounding bags are a way for in your home, if I don't have the financial capacity to get all the $9 outlets to time all my electrical input, I want to be able to sleep in a recovery kind of mindset that I'm not having that impact. So the grounding bags are made of what? What's in the grounding bag?
We hand mine crystals. These crystals have moisture and magnetic properties in them. Because they're hand mined, they've been compressed from an underground water source. So they're alive, they have moisture in them. The combination of the moisture with the magnetic properties allows them to be so much stronger, exponentially stronger for having a resonance that creates a coherence between us and non-native EMFs. And so we literally place them in this bag. We put this bag on your bed, at the head of the bed, or underneath the bed, lean it against the leg of the bed so it's touching the bed. You'll sleep 3 to 50% deeper, converting that waveform into harmonizing it for our body.
So, Justin, as it relates to athletes, which is what that's my community, that's my sweet spot. Do you recommend that a grounding bag is in their bag in the locker room? Do you recommend a bag in their locker? Because you know as well as I do, as we move up to the pro level, locker rooms are in themselves a center of magnetic influence. There's just all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, every locker at the pro level, regardless of the sport, has an iPad on it. They go to the weight room. There's an iPad on the weight racks. There's electronic influences all over every place they roam. So do you what is your recommendation for the grounding bags regarding those environments?
Yeah, I think the organizations should start to have these guys have them in their locker rooms and then create a pile. We say 5 grounding bags together on the floor clear 2,000 square feet of all those resonances. But I interviewed Gary Vitti, the former LA Laker athletic trainer for 30 years, probably one of the most successful ones out there. He was using radio frequencies to basically tell when someone was going to get injured. So he could predict injuries he claimed he could predict an injury from metering these guys every day when they were going through practice. I was biting my tongue going, you're radiating them, chipping away their life force, aging them faster, slowing them down through this process. Look, I've worked with professional athletes for 25 years. You take a baseline test when you want to test something. You take maybe a midline and then definitely an endpoint, so you know the start and finish. You're not doing it every day with this tech stuff. That just chips away at their health. So we have to go in and look at these weight rooms and say, hey, what's the resonance in there for these guys? Let's quiet that down. It shouldn't be all hardwired. Again, we should go back to writing these workouts down and really coming up with a formula that doesn't weaken them while they're doing it, because they're so young and invincible, but it's chipping away at their life force. And the easiest way to say it is, hey, what's the NCAA protocol for concussion? There's no screen time, Wolf. They don't want you using this stuff because it messes with your blood-brain barrier. Yeah. So why in the world are we letting these guys work out and bask in these waveforms? Just so it's automated? There's no way.
Yeah, you open up the TBI Pandora's box and you're going to get a lot of pushback because it's not, they don't want to talk about it. It's too scary. It's not fast enough. We've got millions of dollars invested in these guys. We want them back on the field as quickly as possible. There are people that I work with in professional football that, and the most recent one was the Miami Dolphins quarterback who should not, after the first hit when he came up stumbling, should not have gone back into the game, nor the week later gone back into the game and played. And as a result, he was hurt even more, and regretfully he's playing. But your point is well taken about the healing power, those electromagnetic forces that create an EMF barrier, if you will, influence the healing power. You mentioned blood. The wiring systems in your body, in the nerve systems are broken down. The synapses are elongated and widened. The gaps are widened because of that EMF impact, instead of being where they should be and close, which is why you have diminished capacity cognitively with athletes, with or without a TBI. They're just not the sharpest tool in the shed, and they wonder, well, why are you were okay yesterday? Well, you didn't give them a chance to decompress, literally, from those electromagnetic forces. So we've got the grounding bags. You've given a great setup about where to place these things, but what would you recommend as the verbal responses athletes need to get kind of in their head as that sound bite that they need to say to their head coaches, their trainers about, no, I'm not going to go on the flight. If we're going to go commercial, I'm not doing it.
Well, they can do it. Well, they just have to opt out of the X-ray machine. Go through the metal detector. Have a less of a stressor on your body. I mean, these are huge things. So these guys have to, organizations should start to come up with protocols for less EMF, because the easiest way to make someone better is to clear the stressors out of their life, right?
Yep.
So this would be, EMF is one of the biochemical stressors. So you're going to tell your guys not to go, drink a bunch of alcohol and take drugs before they play a game. Well, why would you send them in through an X-ray machine, right before they're going to play a game, to decharge their body, and especially their eyes? I just had a high school baseball player. His eyes were decharged from so much screen time and bad lighting in the schools, and we got him in here. I did the tapping protocol with the grounding bag. Tap on the bag, cover your eyes, do that for 20 seconds. The guy went 3 for 4 the next day and he had the best game of his life, literally. Because his eyes were able to start, there was energy back in there. He could start to see things a lot better. We didn't even do the eye strengthening exercises. We just recharged them, gave their polarity back. I mean, these are simple things because our body, it's thermodynamics, piezoelectric effect. Our body has a natural electromagnetic field. It has a resonance. So let's understand this, that this stuff is way different. And when you got NFL guys, you know, going into especially combine stuff or training camp stuff where they're earning their right on the team and making their mark, the second they're off the field, they're in a little room with this massive TV 2 feet in front of them playing video games for hours with headphones, wireless stuff. I mean, you're doing them a disservice if you're not educating them, because I guarantee you the industries, my dad grew up, he was a farmer from Iowa, they were lying to him about glyphosate, you know, when he was farming. It's like, we've been lied to for profit by all these industries.
Go Roundup. Let me ask you this question. It's kind of an infomercial pause. Let's make sure that everybody understands where's the best place to connect with you, and understand more about the grounding bags and the processes that we've talked about. And then once you give them that information, we'll go into a little bit more about the practical realities of how to kind of flush it out. What are the environments I need to go to cleanse myself? So, how to connect?
Athleticism.com. It's spelled athletic, ISM, for those of you who can't spell very well. And then emfrocks.com. You can get the grounding bags directly on there, but I sell everything and more, all curated health products on athleticism.com.
So we talked a little bit in the onset of the show today, Justin, about, you know, nature and hugging a tree and cleansing waters, the cooling, you know, become a polar bear, you know, that kind of thing, those processes. But let's get a little bit more focused in on the kind of a daily routine that you would recommend someone to get into their life and mindfulness efforts to diminish the impact of EMF forces in their worlds.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Southern California, so we have a more mild climate than most of Midwest, you know, spots. But I go barefoot every day. In the morning, I take my dog on a walk. We live near the beach, so I go on the beach and I walk barefoot down to the beach, and then my feet are in the sand and in the water first thing in the morning. And then I surf as well, so I'm in the water at least once a day, and if I'm not surfing, I just jump in, cold water therapy, and swim around. I dive. I'm in the water, in that body of water, the Pacific Ocean, almost every day, and if I'm not, I'm grounding, you know, by being barefoot. And if I can't get barefoot, if I'm traveling, I'm going out. If I'm in Las Vegas, I'm touching a tree and just rooting in through that tree. And then also having the intent. So if you're stuck and you can't even do all that, have the intent to ground yourself. And this is a huge thing through just your mind and this intent. You can pretend as though you're this big, strong tree with the deepest roots. And the more the wind blows, the deeper your roots get, and the more you ebb and flow, and the more rooted and grounded you are. And that will start to recharge your body battery just through intent.
I like the way you said that, with the intent. And let me make connections that you can help me either validate or refute. I do like you do. I'm in the mountain state of Colorado, so I don't have the essence of the milder climate, but we have a pretty good season here. So I'm in water pretty much every day in some way, shape, or form. And then with that, I'm also constantly grounding myself physically with yoga and breathing techniques to make sure I change my environmental influences. So when you talk about those intents, Justin, what are some areas that are common to people, regardless of where they're at on the globe, that they could experience to get the same kind of impacts that you feel when you walk on the beach?
Yeah, ask the question again. I was disrupted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you mentioned your environment and how you get yourself reconnected to that earth and that rooted process through the beach, the sand, the water. What are some other practical ways that you would recommend people to do that? Like for me, I do yoga. I'm in the pool every day, swimming. I also do things in nature. I get out in the trees, in the mountains. I've got winter sport athletes now at the Olympic and pro levels. So I'm constantly within environments that help me decompress from those sources. But that executive, for example, now it starts to shift. Give me some recommendations that you would say that are not unique, but somewhat common that people can touch and do to get themselves grounded.
Well, a picnic out on the lawn is really simple. Go touch a tree is really simple. Barefoot's really simple. Get into any body of water. You know, that's really a more fun way to go about it as well. Get out into nature, because remember, you don't just get it from the earth, you get it from the sun.
Yeah.
I recommend gardening, decentralizing our food industry, and start to be a producer and produce your own food. And then you don't have it with glyphosate and GMO, and you're starting to feed your body and your soul, and you're getting grounded while your hands are in the soil as well. Those are just simple ways to go about it.
Excellent, excellent. So now we've got the athlete that you and I have worked with are at the upper levels, you know, the high college, pro, high school athletes that's not the common community for everybody that's out there. Is there any limitation to the grounding bag, or can it work for everybody?
It can work for everyone. You can never get enough good out there, right? You can't get enough nature, you can't get enough good of the resonance. The one thing to be aware of is if someone is toxic, when good meets toxicity, that doesn't work very well. So what we want to do is make sure you clear your biofield. Bruce Lipton talks about your chi, your energy. Your health lies in your energy field. And so when you tap on the grounding bag, that'll clear in 10x, up to 10 times increase someone's energy. And so we got to clear any stuck EMF in their biofield, in that energy field that, you know, everyone knows goes out about 6 feet. Like, that's how the resonance of your body, the coherence of your body can spread out about that far. And we want to clear any stuck toxicity in that area and then recharge your body battery. And the most simple way to do it is by tapping on the bag. Once you do that and do an external flush or detox of EMF, you'll integrate really well with the bag and you'll sleep better than you've ever slept in your life.
So the positives are fairly easy to understand. Talk about what World Health Organization has talked about it. Physicians have talked about the influence of power lines on the immune system, and what are some of the things that we know that too much of that exposure will create? Cancer seems to be one of those, but what are some other things that people can, you don't want to get to this place, but hopefully you prevent it before you get there, but what are some of the regretfully negative consequences by not paying attention to the impacts of EMF?
Great question. And the first things I saw clinically were the eyes, teeth, thymus, and large intestine getting decharged. And from there, what I think level 1 EMF textbook toxicity role is all cognitive, focus, memory, anxiety, fatigue, stress, behavioral challenges, headaches, lack of sleep, all cognitive stuff. Then you go into level 2 would be more severe symptoms of a migraine, ringing in the ears, muscle twitching, tremors, bloody noses, non-trauma concussion symptoms of nausea, and the list goes on that. And then you go into the bigs, cancer, suicide, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and cardiovascular. All those have exponentially increased in the last 130 years since we introduced electricity into our homes and started wearing shoes. diabetes took the cake, literally, there's your pun, because it's fake modified food. And the biggest one, Lowell, right now that I'm really wanting everyone to be aware of is the lack of fertility. Because guys' sperm counts plummet when you have laptops on your lap and your phone sticking right next to your private parts. Women's eggs, their ovaries absorb 10 times the amount of radiation than any other part of their body. They don't replenish them. They have their ovaries one time for their whole life. So when you start changing this makeup of the body and the reproductive side, we're going to start to see challenges down the road, as many, many tests have already showed.
So let's take a look at the behavioral side of what our communities and our cultures globally have talked about, like ADD, ADHD, those neurological buzzwords and phrases. And I say it with tongue in cheek because as an educator, I've been around all different ages, and I know that environment has a huge impact on perpetuating the negative side of cognitive behavioral issues. And whether that manifests itself in an IEP, a difficulty of behavior in the classroom or socially on the playground, there's many times no explanation. There's just, as an educator or a school psychologist, I just have to deal with it. Well, why can't we think about a solution for it? You're also indicating to me that there's some huge evidence that EMF has a huge influence on those neural pathways that cause negative cognitive response or diminished cognitive capabilities that are called ADHD or ADD. What are your thoughts on that, and what have you heard?
Oh, bioinitiative.org has thousands of studies from hundreds of scientists in 40 countries that show that. I mean, we already know this stuff to be true. I mean, there's thousands of studies. We're getting close, I think, to, and maybe we've already surpassed it and people are just ignoring it, but it was about 16 or 17,000 studies on smoking before the people realized that it caused cancer, or it would acknowledge that it did. So we don't need all this stuff to really realize it. I mean, hey, I did a commercial real estate runnership program, which is an intensive corporate training program right out of college, and they stuck me around the copy machine for weeks on end. I'd be copying papers. I'm pulling papers off the X-ray machine. That's radiation. My fingertips would burn because I'd be doing stacks and stacks of papers for hours a day. Fingertips would burn because I was doing it as fast as I could. I had to copy 4 copies of a whole office room full of files for this thing to go through escrow and close. And I developed nerve sensitivity in my fingertips, and now touching a touch screen is really challenging. I have nerve pain when I touch a touch screen, so I use a stylus. So for me, there's no scratching your head on this stuff. What it will do long term, I feel there's about 20% of the population that's electromagnetic sensitive from non-native EMFs. I would be one of them, excuse me, for my fingertips. But there's a lot that are more cognitive, and Rh negative blood types are more resilient, Rh positive are more susceptible. If your bucket of fullness of toxicity and heavy metals, if someone has a lot of heavy metals in their body, or they had a metal plate or a new hip or a new knee with metal, titanium, they're going to be more of a conductor. They're going to start to see these symptoms and going to have to do more grounding protocols. There's no scratching your head on this stuff. Like electricity is a conductor, and the metal conducts it at a higher level, and this proximity to it are challenges down the road. And so these kids using the touch screens all the time, no, get a mouse and get it corded and hardwire your computer in and save your fingertips so when you're 50, you don't have nerve pain like I do.
So Justin, you've mentioned a number of different things that we need to be aware of, and also the volume of writing, scientific examination of the impact, the source of the levels to be aware of, has been documented very clearly. So what's in the way? Why is the message not being heard?
Money. It's all about for profit, for telecom. And hey, telecom, just like agriculture industry, you have to GMO food and spray with glyphosate to grow more food and feed the world. That's the biggest lie. Okay, then you have, the list goes on and on. You have pharma saying a shot and a mask is health. Well, that's a big lie too. And then you have telecom saying everyone needs 5G and to be connected. Well, there's no electricity in remote deserts and mountains and oceans in all these remote areas. You don't have electricity there. They don't need 5G. The nature, the environment in there will just be destroyed when you do that, because a lot of the bees and the birds, they communicate through millimeter waveforms. And when you disrupt that, disrupts migration patterns, disrupts their communication. It's super, super harmful for that. And even third world countries, there's no electricity in poverty-ridden areas. So what are they going to do with 5G phased array satellites beaming them with radiation? And what are they going to do with 5G? It's all a lie, and it's all a grid to track and trace and start to control a population at the end of the day. Like, that's what they want to do, and they want to use your information to sell you more product, and that's what the surveillance marketing is. That's why the life of your battery, Lowell, gets overrun so quickly. It's because they're aggregating all your information and all your biometrics. They want your eyes, your retina scan. They want your fingerprints. They want your palm prints. They want your face imprints and your voice. Those are biometrics. You never want to give those out for commerce and use those for commerce.
So let's summarize as we get close to the close of the show, Justin, about what we've talked about, because it's extremely enlightening. But as you've said, the economic benefits are contradictory and contrary to the path that needs to be taken. There's too much money in a path that continues to support EMF being present and influencing us. So that's why people continue down those paths. So you mentioned a couple things. One is be aware of your environment personally. Number two, be aware of your environment outside of your home so that you know what to avoid and stay away from. And also, I've also heard you say, even though we can't totally void ourselves from using telecommunications, we can put it down. Spend some time away from it. As you mentioned, in the home, your example was, time out the electricity. Not have it on all the time, especially when you're sleeping, and yet use devices that turn it back on so it's convenient, it's reasonable within the scope of what your lifestyle is. What else would you add to that so that people can begin to blend it into their lives and take a really proactive approach to diminishing the impact of EMF, if not eliminating it?
Those are the first pillars. On a bigger topic, I would just encourage everyone to get back to listening to their bodies and letting their bodies tell them how they feel, not a device. How many steps did I take? Or how did I sleep? Or how do I feel today? Or what's my mood like? Get out of this meta universe that technology is promoting us to go into. Connect with God, get grounded by nature, and know how you feel and listen to your body. That is what we got to get people back into, is knowing how their body feels and listening to it. Because your body knows how to heal. It has all the answers. So does nature. When you're one with her, everything can happen so effectively. Abundance will come your way. Vitality, health, performance, everything.
Let's give them, our audience, again, the connections for you. Athleticism. Go ahead, give them out your connections so they can reach out to you.
Athleticism.com.
And then was it EMFrocks.com?
EMFrocks.com as well.
Okay, and which one is the best one to order the contact bags?
Both sides sell them. Athleticism has our curated products of MCT oil. We have a soil enhancer. We have a jump in. We have my book on there. We have just a ton of amazing products that, and the Faraday bags that help with contact tracing and help with preserving the life of your battery.
Yep.
Here's my book. Yeah, so all those are on athleticism.com.
Excellent, Justin. It's a pleasure meeting you today. Let's try to stay in touch. I think there could be some ways to share with each other and benefit the communities that we try to serve and grow. Give me one last thought that you would share with everybody as a primary takeaway for today's session.
Hey, Lowell, you guys, everyone, get grounded by nature because that's your nature.
Excellently, wonderfully said, my friend. Have a great day today and a wonderful weekend. And you as well. Be grounded.